Morning all. I thought I should go over my game against Hertford the other evening. It was an away match. Hertford is one of the strongest clubs in the Hertfordshire Chess League, Division 1. They've got an IM on board 1, Simon Knott, and other very, very good players. Steve Swanson on board 2, who had a 230 plus performance last season. Byway, an ex-British seniors champion, on board 3. I was playing a very, very talented junior player, Svetlana Sakikova, is about 191 at the moment, higher rated than me at the moment. My grade went down last year a bit. So I was playing with black, and I had, prior to this game, a game which I thought was going to be sort of drawing on adjudication. It turned out I was like minus 1.7, so I had to resign it. And maybe I should go over that at some point as well. And it occurred to me, in this league, because of the adjournments and adjudications, I can't really afford to take too many risks before move 35. But thankfully, my opponent wanted to play on to a finish, so I had to readjust actually at the start of this game. I was prepared to play in some sort of Petrosian style, trying to minimise risks at all costs, trying to stop counterplay, not trying to do anything too clever, or anything which had too much risk. I think what last year I was calling resource independence, that sort of style, which I think links up to a sort of Petrosian style, where the top priority is safety above all else. So I was kind of geared up for that. But when my opponent said to play, the game to the finish, okay, I had to readjust. And I thought, how do I arrange my ideas in this league, in this game? I had this abstract question in the back of my mind for a few days, actually, a very abstract question. How do you manage a set of double-edged swords, where double-edged swords is like strategy, you're thinking strategically, has a weakness that you're not thinking tactically. You're thinking tactically, but you're not thinking strategically. And the list goes on. And then there's certain things like weakness to the last move, forcing moves, and all that. How do you kind of orchestrate that? And my answer at the moment is it's whatever is being rewarded. So if you're playing with adjudications and Germans, then yeah, maybe safety above all else, making sure at no point you get more than, from a computer perspective, -2 at any position, because then you're lost on adjudication, and maybe lost on a German if the opponent really preps up. So I think that might be the answer for me personally. You look at basically what is being rewarded, and that makes sense, because in Blitz you have a completely different style. What is being rewarded? Moving quickly, winning on time, is being rewarded. So that could be the answer for how to sort of look at things. So in this game I thought, well, okay, I'm just going to have to work hard to calculate variations. So anyway, C4 and other stuff. I'm just going to try and work hard in this game. So knight f6, d4, g6. My opponent now played knight c3, bishop g7. So we've got not really one of my favourite systems, a kind of fianchetto system against the king's Indian emerging. But I haven't committed yet my d-pawn. And I remember this book where actually, well, that I didn't actually buy. It's by a Greek GM, but it talks about the acceleration of playing c5 without d6. So I thought I'd give that an idea, a shot here. Give it a shot to play c5 without any d6. And I remember also Kasparov sort of using this in particular against the fianchetto systems. Kind of, you can sometimes go into a Bologna more favourably than usual. But d5 wasn't played. Actually, my opponent plays much more solidly in the centre. Well, when I say solidly, a different approach, just knight f3, and refusing d5. So knight c6, refusing d5 here. I don't know if live book, d5 is a move, but the most popular is just the castle. And the most popular here is d6. I played c takes d4, which is another move. Okay, knight takes d4. And now, actually, the top move in live book is knight takes d4 by far. 11-3-7 games. There's knight g4, so that's a popular move as well. Knight g4, d6. But I played queen a5, that's like 4th down the list, 111 games. I played queen a5. The idea is sometimes to go here. Now this is stopped with e3. Actually, the top move seems to be knight b3 here. Second, knight c2, just about. But e3 is the third most popular. Now, usually black plays d6 here. Now, this is interesting because it looks as though it's a pawn sack. So this is something I think I'm just going to quickly check out with you. d6. What would happen on taking here? Rook b8. I think black's just got play. So what's going on here? Black's got sufficient play here, just giving up that pawn. There looks to be a lot of activity. Is that worth a pawn? It looks to be pretty good. Queen a6, bishop c3, taking. We're in like one game, but it looks as though black's doing fine with that pawn sack. So if we go back to this position here, so d6 is actually the most common move played here, with that pawn sack in mind. Yeah, I suppose this bishop is kind of hemmed in with the pawn on e3. So I played knight e5. It's not really that common. And queen e2 is sufficient. There's no real problem with c4. I started calculating about c4 rather ridiculously. Queen b4 is not doing anything. f4, and I'll put it on Kibitzer now. It will just be a way of losing a piece to take on c4 here. If I take on c4 here, then a3, b4, for example, and the queen gets kicked. Trying to desperately hold on to that knight is losing a piece. So it's good I didn't really do that, going for that c4 pawn. That would be a way of losing very, very quickly indeed. So, okay, so queen e2, I play better move d6. We have bishop d2, and I thought, okay, I'll try and weaken this diagonal a bit. I'll try and play this provocative move, bishop g4, to provoke f3, and f3 did get played, bishop d7. So I wasn't too displeased with my position. From an engine point of view, this position is okay. It's only plus 0.16. Okay, there's a discovered attack on the queen. I move the queen back. Knight takes, and now bishop c3. How could I grind positional edge with black here? Well, okay, I put more pressure on c-pawn. I was almost thinking b5 might almost be playable here. So in this position after b3, I don't think b5 quite works. Again, this prelude forcing move f4 probably gives white an advantage here. For example, knight g4. Now in this position, actually, I was thinking knight takes b5. That might be okay for black. Bishop takes, bishop takes. Now in this position, bishop takes c4, which I didn't calculate during the game. I was just looking at losing the pawn. Actually, that's a nice move which would guarantee equality here. So okay, but there's actually a better thing in this position, apparently, which is just to play h3 first, knight h6. Now to take on b5, that's a key improvement. Bishop takes, bishop takes. And this is slightly different. Bishop takes c4, bishop takes. Why is this better for white? This is given as better for white. It looks as though the knight's a bit stranded. So anyway, it's good I didn't go for this other temptation. I just didn't go for b5 again. I played a more modest a6. So sometimes it does pay to play more less inviting the forcing stuff, just preparing stuff instead. So a6. So f4. I play bishop g4 again, attacking the queen. Queen goes to c2 here. I thought queen d2 might be more to the point for d6 later, but queen c2, the engine does like as well. Queen c2. Knight goes back. Now, I am inviting horrible double pawns here, but if the knight goes back to d7, I've got a technical issue here of h3. Where's my bishop going? I'm going to get double pawns anyway if it goes back either here or f5, and this doesn't look too good. In fact, I'm dropping b7 as well, and that's a massive advantage for white. So the knight has to go back. I'm getting structurally done over a bit, actually. So unfortunately, white does have an advantage now. B takes, doubles my pawns, ouch, and then clamps down almost. But first, well, e4 might be more to the point here to clamp down immediately on d5, or try and clamp down on d5. But queen d3 was played instead. Let's have a quick look at e4 here. e4 here, I think d5 isn't so hot. h3, so the bishop goes back to e6, then there's f5 here, that's very nice. If it went back to d7, rook ad1, apparently this is better for white. This is better for white. So okay, so maybe this is a slight inaccuracy to move the queen to d3. It's not needed. I play now rook e8, and this is adding some pressure now on e3. So h3, bishop e6. I don't want to lose the d6 pawn going back to d7. Yeah, bishop d7, queen takes d6. So I go back to e6, and now e4, check, king h2. And I didn't like really this bind. I was thinking, well, this echoes the Kasparov gambit, surely, breaking the bind dramatically with a d5 break, like the classic Octopus Knight game, Karpov-Kasparov. One of my favourite games of all time. I thought, does d5 work here? Well, it does give my rooks some activity. And I thought, well, I've done a video on rooks on the 7th recently. Wouldn't it be nice to have another video in that series, rooks on the 6th? So with that in mind, d5 was played. So how will I get rooks on the 6th? Okay, so watch out now. E takes d5, c takes, bishop takes d5 was played. I took here, bishop takes. And she doesn't want to leave her second rank, so c takes, but now rook on the 6th, rook e3, and I've got this target here, g3, queen d1, and now my other rook joins on the 6th. And I was wondering, is this the strongest move in the position? Do I really go for rooks on the 6th? If I go like this is not as hot really. I think rook g1, engine's giving, is not a big deal for black. This position, apparently it's equal. Although it does look quite interesting, but I don't want rooks traded off. I don't really want to go into a rook and pawn ending. When maybe I can do something more ambitiously for king safety. Rook cc3, rook g1. And here, actually, the engine evaluation is huge for black, based on the move h5. Now, you might think, well, okay, h5 threatens h4. Is there time for rook c1 as an example? In this position, apparently, well, rook takes g3 is apparently crushing. For example, okay, let's see this. I mean, I didn't see these variations, but let's have a look. Check. Okay, just rook takes c3 here, and that's the end of white's king safety. That looks very, very promising indeed, this sort of position. Although this d pawn's a bit of a concern. Is it going anywhere? Is the d pawn going anywhere? Queen d2. The queen's stuck on h3, so this looks promising for black anyway. So in this position, rook c1 then, rook takes g3. Sorry, h5, rook c1, rook takes g3. You might think, well, if taking here, let's have a quick look at that. Check. Now, if rook g2, this is very interesting. I mean, engines see this stuff immediately. I didn't see any of these variations, to be honest. If king g1 here, oh, rook takes c1, just winning the queen. So rook takes c1's happening next, minimum. So that is all pretty crushing in this position then. After h5, it seems that white can't afford rook c1. Now, if rook g2, apparently this is crushing as well. With, for example, either h4 or rook takes g3. Again, this is an interesting variation as well. Rook takes g3, check. Now, if rook g2, I mean, this is like puzzle-like complications now. It's not to do with c1 clearly, but it's to do with other stuff. I'll take care. Rook takes h3. Apparently this is quite good for black. So what is the actual key threat? Queen h4 and rook h1 is dangerous, but you don't really want to play a rook down without calculation, usually without too much calculation. Will support, but apparently queen e1, queen d4, and this is still dangerous. If the queen went in front there, well then that drops the a1 rook. So if rook f2, check. Queen g4. Apparently this is really dangerous, like a rook down. This is actually winning for black. Okay, if white has to give up the queen now, then it's bad. So the other possibility though is just playing h4 here. Okay, I played in the game a different move, but h4, and apparently here rook takes g3 is working as well. A little bit better maybe in many respects. I have to check. Queen takes h4 check, rook h3. Okay, it threatens this mate in one. What does white actually do? Now let's say king f1, then apparently, well, I can either win the queen, which is okay for black, because the rooks are sort of discoordinated, or queen takes f4 even. Now if king e2, then queen e3 is mating, like this. If in this position, rook f2, then here apparently queen e4 is pretty crushing, so it's kind of creating this mating net for rook h1 being a threat. If rook e2, like queen h1 and rook f3, so it's pretty diabolical, but it needs such calculation to be able to play this way. So this is how to exploit technically rooks on the 6th if you ever get this position. I played instead a move which didn't require much effort on my part to calculate, which isn't probably that good objectively. Rook c d3, but it kept the pressure on. So this h5 stuff is dangerous. Queen f1, queen d4. I just wanted to get my pawn back actually, and just have a better position. Black is actually better though here. In any case, without the rook sack, it appears to be -2. So rook g2, and here playing for rook d2 apparently is very, very good. What does white actually do here? I think I must have really, I don't know what I was doing with these tactical chances, but I was a bit scared to play them. But apparently here, queen b2, I mean, it's easy for an engine to point all this out, but now the threat of rook takes e2 and rook c2 is very annoying indeed for white. So this kind of thing, if here rook takes g3, and now there's a threat, well there's all sorts of threats like queen e3. Okay, so again tactically I'm avoiding this like a chicken. I'm playing queen takes d5. I didn't want to commit to a rook exchange. Now my advantage is still like half a pawn, so I mean it's good I've got my pawn back and I've got pressure. But can white actually hold this? Queen f2 might not be the most accurate move. Apparently rook e1 to get a pair of rooks off would be approaching equality for white here. If taking, white could maybe try for a draw here more easily than what happened, which was queen f2. So here I try and avoid now an exchange of rooks. I play queen e4, so my advantage is actually more than half a pawn now, and one pair of rooks cannot be removed. So h5 is coming up, but first king g7, and now my queens gets kicked. Okay, now the rook goes back. h5 here, so threatening this very, very dangerous undermining. So h4 from white. Here queen g4, rook f1, and in this position a5. Now rook b1. Now rook f3, which looks to be almost forcibly winning g3. The queen goes to e2, pinning against my queen. But here it is actually possible to take on g3 which I did have a brief look at, and I was just concerned about these two versus one, the pawn majority situation. But this is okay. This position, if I take like this, takes. There's no real time, I think, for this. The king can come and blockade the b pawn, and these two pawns are weak. So this is good for black. It's minus 1.37 engine point of view. It's good for black. If we have a look at this scenario just briefly, I think it's a winnable, or is it? You don't. Sometimes a lot of rook and pawn endings are drawn. There's a famous quotation about that. So anyway, I didn't want to go into that. So rook de3. I wanted to keep some pressure on for a moment. Queen goes back, bit of dancing around for a moment. Rook d3, queen e1, queen d5, queen e2. And now I thought, okay, I don't want any threefold repetition if I keep dancing around with the queen, trying to just celebrate the pressure in the position. So I commit actually to rook takes g3, which in theory it's not that good usually, often rather, to lose two rooks for a queen. But here the pawns are weakened. Rook takes g3, rook d2. So I get the queen, rook c2, I take on e2. Queen takes, queen f5, but now stubborn defence, and my score sheet turned into very bad handwriting, so much so that I can't really make out the score. This is just my attempt at reconstruction of these moves. So queen d5, rook g f3, queen d1, apparently f5, and now I'm a bit in trouble on g6. Queen d5, fg, rook g3, queen d1. Rook fg2, oops. And here I remember thinking, oh no, what am I doing? I'm just losing this g6 pawn. This is harder, but my opponent is down to about 2 minutes. I've got about 15, so I managed to somehow accumulate a clock advantage from the pressure positions. I thought, hold on, there's something interesting about this. I can create two passed pawns. At the moment, I haven't got like two passed pawns. I mean, this pawn's inhibited, this pawn's inhibited, but with g5 as a pawn sacrifice, I'm getting two passed pawns. But now, from an engine point of view, it's actually an equal position. But from a practical point of view, my queen can be quite a nuisance as long as the rooks don't coordinate. So g6, queen d5, king g1. Now h4, it's quite dangerous. Rook c4. Now, this wasn't really the game continuation at all. Actually, this is reminiscent of the final position, but it wasn't like this actually. But it's similar to what happened in the end, that there was this check winning the rook. There were other moves in between before this actually happened. I think some other moves, but we got that kind of position with h4 and a rook hanging on c3. So it was a pretty dramatic game. And for me, I mean, conceptually, I'm left with this question about what is being rewarded, basically, as a sort of dictation of style of play, which seems quite logical, because I've always wondered why I'm doing well in some leagues and others, and I think it's to do with adjudications, adjustments, the tempo of play, and that makes sense. You know, you play differently in, say, extremes of chess, correspondence chess, you play differently to a bullet game. So it's what is being rewarded maybe echoes the kind of style to try and adopt. These are my abstract questions. This is just a concrete game anyway, which was a lot of work. But I hope you got something from this. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.